Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Trump versus Columbia University. The war on universities has begun. The Trump administration is demanding that Columbia University make radical changes to its disciplinary and admissions policies or risk losing all federal funding. So far, they've lost $400 million in federal funding, or it's being held up, pending these changes that the Trump people are demanding. But they receive as much as $5 billion a year in federal funding, so this is really about all of their federal funding. Education experts warn that Trump's actions are an attack on academic freedom and a dangerous precedent for government interference in education. It is both those things. It's dangerous because you could do this again in the future. It's never been done before, not this way. And it is also an attack on academic freedom, the ability for college professors and the institution themselves to decide how do they want to teach different things. What courses do they want to teach? What curriculum do they want to have? What indoctrination do they want to do? I don't like the idea of the federal government doing this, but I know that they have to do this. Things are going in the wrong direction at the colleges and universities. If we don't turn them around, it's only going to further damage the country. A severe problem requires severe actions, and that's what this is. Fox puts it well. Trump's attempt to take over Columbia University briefly explained. The administration demanded Columbia make sweeping policies and governance changes or lose billions in federal funds. If I was out to make changes to these institutions, I could not have come up with anything else. And I'm a pretty tough guy. I'm pretty vicious when it comes down to it. These guys are at least as vicious as I am. And they definitely brought people in with tremendous expertise to know exactly how to nail down the university, what changes they needed to demand, how to execute on them, and who would or wouldn't have to be replaced, and then also how they would have follow-up. And this is only one of their demands from the Chronicle of Higher Education. Can Trump force Columbia University to expel student protesters? Yeah, they can, and they're about to do it. And this is part of the issue with these universities. We're not really always talking about American students. In fact, students who are actually citizens of the country represent a minority of the total students. At Columbia University, more than 20,000 students are international students as of 2023, representing 55% of the total student population. So is it reasonable for an American university to have American standards when it comes to protest, curriculum, education, safety standards so that students can actually go from one class to another? They don't have to feel like they're going to get threatened by other students who are protesting, but sometimes assaulting them. Yeah, we have to have American standards at American universities, no matter how many people come from other countries to come to our universities. Our American universities that apparently receive billions and billions and billions of dollars every year from American taxpayer support. If we're financing a lot of the institution, could we at least have some basic standards at these places? The new administration thinks the answer is yes. And as far as international students go, this might be something we have to look into. From Breitbart, there are 300,000 Chinese nationals, meaning Chinese citizens, in our university system. China is not exactly an ally. I don't know if it's okay that we have 300,000 Chinese nationals in our university system. We may have to look into that. This letter, which if I was to receive this letter, I would say, oh my God, I am getting out of here. This letter came from the administration letting the interim president of Columbia University know, Katrina Armstrong, the changes she would have to make to her school or start getting used to getting a little bit less than the $5 billion a year you were counting on from the federal government. And it goes a little something like this. Dear Dr. Armstrong, please consider this a formal response to the current situation on the campus of Columbia University and a follow-up to our letter of March 7th, informing you that the United States government would be pausing or terminating federal funding. And this letter from the government is a response to their attorneys asking for what are the next steps for us to continue the financing. A very reasonable question. The answer is not the answer they wanted to get. In the letter, they explain that U.S. taxpayers invest enormously in U.S. colleges and universities, including Columbia University, and it's the responsibility of the federal government to ensure that all recipients are responsible stewards of federal funds. Columbia University, however, has fundamentally failed to protect American students and faculty from anti-Semitic violence and harassment, in addition to other alleged violations of Title VI and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That's a little bit of the diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. This letter outlines immediate next steps that we regard as a precondition for formal negotiations regarding Columbia University's continued financial relationship with the United States government. And when they say precondition, they mean if you agree to all these things, then we will start to negotiate with you, not about these things. These are you've got to agree to do at least these things. The rest we can start to negotiate. This is hardball with a baseball bat that looks like Negan's baseball bat from The Walking Dead. The letter also demands that they will document compliance with the following requests no later than the close of business on Wednesday, March 20th, 2025. So they give them a couple of days to figure out if they want to kind of stay at university or not, or if maybe they could ask their foreign students for a little bit extra money and then, give up on $5 billion a year worth of funding, which I don't think they can do. Here's the demands. Enforce existing disciplinary policies. The university must complete disciplinary hearings for Hamilton Hall and encampments. Meaningful discipline means expulsion or multi-year suspension. So for the students that got involved in the Hamilton Hall unrest and took over that building, they're going to have to get expelled, or they could be suspended for a few years. You could choose between those two, or you're not going to see any money from us. They have to guarantee the primacy of the president of the university in disciplinary matters. They must abolish the university judicial board and centralize all disciplinary processes under the office of the president, and empower the office of the president to suspend or expel students with an appeal process through the office of the president. So no more games with trying to say, well, we'll take these students and we'll give the issue to the university judicial board, and if they decide that they want to punish those students, we'll see what they say, and then we'll go back and forth. No games, no judicial board, everything through the office of the president, and we already told you what we expect the president to do. They also must implement permanent comprehensive time, place, and manner rules to prevent disruption of teaching, research, and campus life. Those rules would say that protesters cannot violate those rules so that students' life is not disrupted by those protesters. If you want to go outside and yell, go outside and yell. Don't chase students in the street. Don't block students from being able to go to class or being able to go home. Remember, if students live on campus, that is their home. You can make your free speech statements. You just can't terrorize people while you do it. You're going to need to have a mask ban. You must ban masks that are intended to conceal identity or intimidate others, with exceptions for religious and health reasons. Any masked individual must wear their Columbia ID on the outside of their clothing. And this policy is already the policy at Columbia's Irving Medical Center. Extend it for the rest of the campus. You must deliver a plan to hold all student groups accountable. Recognize student groups and individuals operating as constituent members of or providing support for unrecognized groups engaged in violations of university policy must be held accountable through formal investigations, disciplinary proceedings, and expulsion as appropriate. You must formalize, adopt, and promulgate a definition of anti-Semitism. You must empower internal law enforcement. The university must ensure that Columbia Security has full law enforcement authority, including arrest and removal of agitators who foster an unsafe or hostile work or study environment or otherwise interfere with classroom instruction or the functioning of the university. And here's one of the most extreme but absolutely necessary demands for them to make to change the culture of the university. The MESAAS Department, Academic Receivership. Begin the process of placing the Middle East, South Asian, and African Studies Department under academic receivership for a minimum of 5 years. The university must provide a full plan with date-certain deliverables by March 20th, 2025. Additionally, the university must deliver a plan for comprehensive admissions reform. The plan must include a strategy to reform undergraduate admissions, international recruiting, and graduate admissions practices to conform with federal law and policy. That is a hint to the diversity, equity, and inclusion problem. Any recruiting that they do, nationally, internationally, undergraduate, graduate admissions, all of it must be within the federal law, which means no discrimination, treat everybody the same based on merit. And then they wrap it up. We expect your immediate compliance with these critical next steps, after which we hope to open a conversation about immediate and long-term structural reforms that will return Columbia to its original mission of innovative research and academic excellence. University administrators and the education community are very upset about this letter. They also know there's nothing they can do about it, so they're freaking out. They're losing their minds. Because Columbia University is an important university. It's an Ivy League school. It's one of our top schools. But more importantly, it's only one of several schools being investigated by the government for these kinds of activities. Illegal activities, DEI activities, not protecting students' rights. There are dozens of colleges and universities being investigated by the new administration. From Inside Higher Ed, Education Department investigates dozens of colleges for discrimination. It's over 60. And it's really clear this administration means serious business. Here's InsideHigherEd.com losing their minds over the Education Department's letter. Trump's demands to Columbia reflect assault on higher education, according to experts. The administration wants Columbia University to make sweeping changes to its discipline and admissions process. Experts say the demands are overreaching. If Columbia University wants a financial relationship with the federal government, the Ivy League institution will need to overhaul its discipline process, ban masks, expel some students, put an academic department under review, give its campus security full law enforcement authority, and reform its admissions practices. Those are just some of the sweeping and unprecedented demands the Trump administration made on Thursday in a letter to the Manhattan-based institution. They come less than a week after the cancellation of $400 million in federal grants and contracts at the university. The demands escalate an already precarious situation for Columbia as it simultaneously faces pressure from the White House to comply and pressure from students and faculty to fight back. I get the idea of wanting to fight back, and I understand where if you've been protected for so long, you would think, hey, come on, you don't have to just roll over for this. You could do something to fight back. The answer is, with an overwhelming force like this, the only way to retain whatever it is that you have left and maybe live to be subversive again is to just give up. If they fight back with this, the administration is going to use them as an example. There's no beating the administration when they're the ones that are writing these multi-billion-dollar checks. You could sue the administration. Maybe that'll help. It's not really going to help. Because even if a judge got involved and started dictating what the administration could or couldn't do with federal funds, that would not be a multi-year solution. Maybe some small percentage of money would continue from year to year based on a judge overextending their ability and their authority to try to make decisions for the federal government. But realistically, you can't go to war with the government. Disney learned this in Florida when they tried to fight the, quote, don't say gay law, as they called it. It didn't work out so well for Disney. Of course, they lost. Quote, we are in a state of shock and disbelief, and we are working with our administration to reaffirm free speech and shared governance on campus, and to resist all Trump efforts to take academic decisions out of the hands of academics, said Gene Howard, a member of the executive committee of the Columbia chapter of the American Association of University Professors. Quote, our administration has been cautious in dealing with Trump up to now. We're hoping they will take a more aggressive posture in the future. A Columbia spokesperson told Inside Higher Ed that officials are reviewing the letter but didn't say Friday whether the university would comply with the demands. Several free speech and higher ed policy experts say the letter amounts to an unprecedented assault on higher education that could threaten foundational principles such as academic freedom. Academic freedom really should be for the students, not for the professors. I hate to be that guy. I want students to be able to be free to learn. I don't want professors to be able to teach whatever it is that they want to teach, especially when it results in violence on campus. The demands, which don't appear rooted in any specific legal authority, also offer yet another hint at how President Trump could reshape higher education. Quote, the subjugation of universities to official power is a hallmark of autocracy, Jamil Jaffer, executive director of the Knight's First Amendment Institute at Columbia, said in a statement. Quote, no one should be under any illusions about what's going on here. But the Trump administration says canceling the grants and contracts is necessary due to Columbia's continued inaction in the face of persistent harassment of Jewish students. In the letter, officials said that the university has fundamentally failed to protect American students and faculty from anti-Semitic violence. If you're an American student and you go to Columbia University and you're getting harassed and assaulted and yelled at and you can't go to class and you can't go in certain buildings, maybe you're afraid to even be able to go back to your dorm because of their massive international population, I'm sure there are local students that also did that are citizens, but it does seem a little bit out of control. Ted Mitchell, president of the American Council on Education, criticized the letter as an outrageous example of extreme federal overreach, adding that institutional autonomy is a critical part of American higher education. Well, I hope self-funding becomes a critical part of American higher education, because that looks like where you guys are headed. Unless you could turn around quickly and say, look, we don't even know how to comply with your letter, but we will comply with your letter as quickly as we can. If you'll help us do it, let's get this done. That's what Columbia has to do. They really have no other option here. And if Columbia did that, if they said, could you just help us comply? We don't even know how to do this. Columbia could set a great example that other colleges and universities could follow. It would be very beneficial to Columbia and the administration. Quote, it's perfectly reasonable for the federal government to hold all of those institutions accountable to civil rights laws, and we expect that, he said. But for the government to prescribe changes in academic structure, changes essentially in curriculum, and to curtail research, that's beyond the pale. One of the letter's 12 demands is for Columbia to put its Middle East, South Asian, and African Studies department under academic receivership for at least 5 years. This would mean that faculty lose the control of the department and the university puts an outside chair in charge. The letter didn't specify why officials focused on this particular department, but it's worth noting the academic division is home to Joseph Massad, a controversial tenured professor whom lawmakers have accused of making anti-Israel and anti-Jewish statements over the years. Professors and other experts have warned that federal scrutiny, including high-profile grillings and subpoenas from Capitol Hill, could have damaging consequences for colleges. But alarm escalated significantly last week when the Trump administration bypassed the typical investigation process for civil rights violations and slashed Columbia's access to grants and contracts. Because typically the federal government would go through a long evaluation process where the college could respond and they could offer to solve things with them, and then if it didn't get solved, it could go to the Justice Department. The Trump administration said, no, we're not messing with any of that. We're not giving you time to mess around. Let's get this solved. Let's get this solved now. And that's why they seized those grants. The cuts made by Trump's novel multi-department anti-Semitism task force are the first, but not likely the last. The task force has already said at least 10 other universities are already under review, including Harvard University and the University of California, Berkeley. Ryan Enos, a professor of government at Harvard, said Columbia needs to reject the demands and other universities need to speak up now in defense of higher education. If left on its own, Columbia could fail to defend itself, he said. Quote, other universities have an imperative to come to the defense of Columbia, because this is not just about Columbia, Enos said. The Trump administration is trying to attack all of higher education, and Columbia cannot try to mount a defense on its own. Literally every college and university could try to stand up against the Trump administration, and they would have no way to do it, because the Trump administration is the one writing the checks. Regular people, normal people understand that our colleges and universities are in terrible trouble. They need to be radically overhauled. If they're not fixed, then they're of no value to the American people. In fact, they're the enemy of the American people, and the American people don't need any new enemies. There's a massive amount of cleaning up that needs to get done, and that's what they're trying to do here. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.